and later a tunnel to keep the lake at a safe level. On privately owned lands, salvage operations to reclaim the downed timber got underway quickly. After a careful environmental analysis, the Forest Service allowed salvage in the National Forest. Though there have been lesser eruptions several times since May 1980, scientists from the U.S. Geological Survey visit the steaming crater, continuing to monitor the changes taking place. And as a new mountain begins to take shape inside the crater in the form of a slowly building dome of hot lava, we're learning more about how volcanoes are formed. Other researchers from the Forest Service, universities, and private research organizations are conducting ongoing research projects in areas affected by the eruption. All of them are seeking answers to such questions as, how did the eruption affect water, plants, and wildlife? How can we better predict eruptions? What can we learn about the formation of the Earth and its soils, and how life interacts? On the slopes of the mountain, scientists such as biologist Jim McMahon found that what looked like a dead environment was really very much alive.
When I first visited the volcano in the summer of 1980 and looked out at the terrific amount of destruction, I found it almost impossible to believe that plants and animals could survive. To my amazement, and I think to the amazement of all my colleagues, as we began to look more carefully in places that had been leveled by even the most serious impacts of the volcano, we were able to find plants and animals that had survived. And even if there weren't survivors, new migrants coming in from the outside were already beginning to get a foothold. One way that a lot of animals survived on the morning of May 18th in 1980 was to be below ground. For some animals, they not only live below ground, but all of the nutrients that they require come from below ground resources. A good example of that is the animal that made this mound, the pocket gopher. Not only do pocket gophers stay underground and they can survive with the roots and bulbs that were underneath the volcanic material, but they actually help the new plants that are coming in to reestablish.
Scientists like Joe Means of the Forest Service are studying those processes that allowed many plants and trees to survive the blast and the layer of ash, or tephra.
Here's a Pacific silver fir doing very well after coming out from under the snowpack and under the tephra, and some others not doing so well. But after they survived the tephra fall and the hot blast, they also had to reach the surface. And some of them did, like this one that's fairly stiff, and some of them did to a limited extent, like this one that's still quite bent over. And some trees, such as this little silver fir here, could not. You can see he's fairly well stuck, no green foliage on his crown. In the zone of blown down forests, one of the most important sites for survival of plants was on the vertical surfaces of root wads of blown down trees, such as you see here. Here you see some huckleberries, which survived the eruption under a snowpack, and they were further helped by being on this vertical root wad surface because pumice and ash did not collect here and smother them.
The aquatic systems around Mount St. Helens received a variety of impacts from the volcano. They range from places like Maida Lake here, where on the morning of May 18th, the surface of the water was covered with ice and snow. That helped to insulate the organisms in the water from the effects of the volcanic fallout. The result of that is that fishes and reptiles and amphibians like frogs and salamanders survived in place and have continued to breed even as early as the summer of 1980.
Not only are plants and animals coming back to the landscape, so are people. In the first years after the eruption, more than 1 million people have visited the area. In fact, the volcano has become a major point of interest for visitors from throughout the world. The Forest Service has provided access to various viewpoints inside the blast zone, such as this one at Windy Ridge overlooking Spirit Lake.
Right now, if we drained all of Spirit Lake, we'd have to go down through about 120 feet of mud to get to the top of the old lake.
Presentations by the Forest Service describe many of the subtle features of the blast area and provide answers to many a curious visitor.
Where was the Harry Truman Lodge down there?
Okay, Harry Truman's Lodge was right over at the tip of this ridge right over there, the one coming into the water. But of course, he was down about 300 feet from where it is now, because he was on the old lake line. And so he's been covered by about 120 feet of mud, and then the water on top of that.
To preserve the area around the mountain as a natural wonder, Congress and the President declared 110,000 acres as the Mount St. Helens National Volcanic Monument, to be managed by the Forest Service. This assures that much of the area where the effects of the eruption are so dramatic will be allowed to recover naturally, so that present and future generations can get a close-up look at the rebuilding processes of nature. For those who can't make the trip to the blast zone, but who still have curiosities to satisfy, a visitor center has been established near Interstate 5. Displays and information are also provided at the Forest Service information stations on the way into the monument. For those who do travel to the blast zone, the first impression is one of utter bleakness. Many are saddened to see an area of such abundant beauty now transformed into a seeming wasteland. But as the days and years go by, what becomes awe-inspiring is the rebirth, the regrowth, the return of life. The beauty that was the attraction for so many before the eruption is returning, albeit at nature's own pace.
Now, if we look here, what do we see down in there? Look, we saw a fish, and there's just life coming back. And also, look at that, there's plants there. And there's plants coming back everywhere, and along with the plants, there's animals that come back. And just like that, there's a little frog right there.
Volcanoes are secretive and largely unpredictable. Mount St. Helens may remain active for months, years, even centuries. But one thing for sure, it will continue to change. That's the way it is with volcanoes. For now, we have a landscape in transition, a rare opportunity to look into the Earth's window and learn more about our planet and the life that thrives upon it, and a chance to marvel at nature's persistent ability to heal what seem to be devastating wounds, and to rebound and prosper with abundant life and beauty.
Tells the story, all right. Thousands and thousands of telephones to be made and all kinds of materials needed to make them. Copper, nickel, cotton, gold, silver. And from where? It's a tough job.
It ain't so tough.
That's what you think. Where did you come from?
Oh, I've been around. I know an easy way to get materials and make telephones.
You and what army?
Don't need an army. Just a little imagination. Watch. Well, what's so funny? I got what I went after, didn't I? See? Here's copper, nickel, wax, lead, cotton, and all the others that you need.
Well, that certainly does require imagination. But how on earth are you going to make 433 telephone parts from those paper labels?
Still skeptical, eh? Okay, mister, help me clear the deck for action, and I'll show you.
Silly idea. But maybe I'd better humor this little fella. No telling what he'll do next.
I'll show him.
Well, so far so good. But your job is only half done. You still haven't got a telephone.
Mister, haven't you got any imagination? Must I do it all? Take over, Ringer. It's your move. Music, maestro, please.
Nice going, nice going. But, what about the chords?
The chords? Oh, yeah, the chords. Hey, Ringer, how about the chords? What did I tell you? It ain't so tough.
Yes, but your way of doing it won't help us. Imagine making telephones out of paper labels. Why, that's movie stuff.
You're not fooling, boss. That's the only place it is easy. In the movies. This is the end, folks.
Wages and prices often play leapfrog. One jumps up, then the other, which means a steady rise in our cost of living. The Dilly Doll Factory is a happy shop. But Joe, our doll painter friend, seems to be a little down in the mouth, which even shows in his work. Joe is pretty discouraged because the high cost of living makes it harder and harder to make ends meet.
Hiya, Joe, old boy.
Hello.
Better look in that envelope.
Wow, a raise! And just in time to buy the kid a birthday present. What'll I get? Let's see. A dress? Bicycle? Roller skates? Shoes? A book? A doll? A doll! What's the price, miss? I work in a factory that makes this doll. $2 is too much.
I'm very sorry, sir, but your company charged us more for this shipment, so we had to raise our selling price.
We got a wage increase, all right, but it couldn't raise the price that much. It just takes a little wood, rubber, paint, cloth, and a phony wig to make that doll. There's only about 10 cents worth of materials in the whole thing. You pirates, crooks, bandits, you robbers!
You're right about the cost of raw materials in that doll, about 10 cents worth. Raw materials in practically everything we buy are worth little until labor transforms them into finished products. For example, how much do you think the raw materials cost in that car?
Oh, About 300 bucks.
You've got a surprise coming. It takes 4.5 tons of coal, 2 3/4 tons of iron ore, 50 pounds of cotton, 14 pounds of cured and finished wool, aluminum, zinc, lead, copper, and countless other raw materials to make an automobile. Without the addition of labor costs, these things are worth about $22. The raw materials require the accumulated labor of thousands of people in countless crafts to transform them into a finished automobile. Miners dig the coal and iron ore. Railroad and maritime workers transport these materials to the steel mill, where workers convert the ore into finished steel. The wages of railroad workers add to the value of steel when it is transported to automobile factories. The cotton that goes into a car accumulates labor cost from the farmer who tills the soil, from workers who sow the seed, and help to raise the cotton. Wages paid to other workers add to the value of the cotton as it is moved from the field to the cotton gin where it is processed. Other workers transport the cotton to the automobile factory. The wool that is used to make a car is worth little while it is still on the sheep. When the labor cost of a sheep shearer is added, the value of the wool is increased by his wages. When all of the parts and materials finally reach the factory for assembly, the labor cost of automobile workers must be added to the price of the car. In the $1,500 automobile, direct and indirect labor costs add up to approximately $1,200, or over 80% of the selling price. That's before taxes. And what happens to the other 20%, or $300? Raw material cost, $22. Profit to producers of raw materials and allied industries, $89. Profit to part manufacturers, $47. Profit to local dealer, $77. Profit to car manufacturer, $65. Now, when you add $400 for taxes, the cost is $1,900 to the buyer. Like the dolls you make, an automobile has a low raw material cost and a high labor cost, and that goes for practically everything we buy.
Oh, yeah? Well, what's the labor cost in a buck's worth of steak?
We'll start back at the farm where Bully Boy was raised. The selling price of meat has to include the labor cost in producing the feed, in building fences, and constructing housing for our animal friend. It takes a lot of costly care to get Bully Boy ready for the market. Wages have to be paid to railroad workers who provide our friend with care and courtesy on his way to the stockyards. Preparing Bully Boy's anatomy for the butcher shop costs money, too. The family butcher figures in his wages every time he sells a thick, juicy steak. Forgetting taxes for a moment, the labor cost in a dollar's worth of meat adds up like this. Workers raising beef, 24 cents. Transportation workers, 1/2 cent. Packing house workers, 42 cents. Meat delivery drivers, 1/2 cent. Butcher shop workers, 18 cents. The other 15 cents goes in profits to the retailers, the packers, allied industries, and to the farmers and ranchers. Most of the things we buy accumulate direct and indirect labor costs that add up to 85% of the selling price before taxes are added. Generally speaking, a wage raise means a corresponding rise in prices, unless productivity is increased proportionately.
What do you want, a guy with 4 arms? 4 arms? Say, I got a sensational idea.
To expand productivity, labor and management must work together to develop new ideas and techniques. To expand productivity, capital must finance the creation of more efficient tools and plants. The production of more and better goods at lower costs means that when you get a wage raise, it's a real raise.
A raise. A raise! I want to buy a doll. How much?
Now you've got a real wage raise because you can buy more with what you earn. With increased productivity, wages can keep ahead of prices.
Range to go of 1,791 nautical miles. Apollo 13 should have entered the Earth's atmosphere at this time. Moments ago we had a report from the retro fire officer that based on his data, a predicted set of coordinates for splash of 21 degrees, 39 minutes south, 165 degrees, 22 minutes west. The period of blackout for the spacecraft should have begun about 20 some odd seconds ago. Apollo Control Houston, Apollo 13 should be coming up on max G right now. Our last estimate for max G was 5.2 Gs. We have about a minute and a half to go during this period of blackout. Here in Mission Control, the scene from the recovery ship Iwo Jima has been flashed up on one of our large screens for all of the flight controllers to watch.
We have about 1 minute to go now from time of end to blackout. About 30 seconds to go for blackout. Less than 10 seconds now. We will attempt to contact Apollo 13 through one of the Oriya aircraft. Continuing to monitor this, Apollo Control, Houston. Apollo 13 should be out of blackout at this time. We're standing by for any reports of Oriya acquisition. The Oriya, a C-135 type aircraft. Coming up now on 3 minutes until time of drogue deployment. Standing by for any reports of acquisition. We've had a report that Oriya 4 aircraft has acquisition of signal.
Odyssey Houston, standing by, over. Okay, we read you, Jack.
That was Jim Lovell responding with the OK Joe. Correction there, that was Command Module Pilot Jack Swigert.
We're looking at the weather on TV, and it looks just as advertised, real good.
Less than 2 minutes now from time of drogue deployment. Less than a minute away now from time of drogue deployment. Less than 30 seconds away now from drogue deployment. The drogue deployment, these two chutes will provide braking and stabilization prior to main chute deployment. Standing by now for continuing to monitor.
Odyssey Houston, standing by for your announced 67 when you get it, over. Roger that.
A report of 2 good drogues coming up now for main chutes. Standing by for confirmation of main chutes.
Odyssey Houston, we show you on the mains. It really looks great.
An extremely loud applause here in Mission Control.
Visual, very good.
An extremely loud applause as Apollo 13 on main chutes comes through loud and clear on the television display here.
Roger.
Visual control is recovery out of visual bearing 190, over. Hey, receiver 101 has a visual 110. Green flash. Hey, receiver, Roger. Apollo 6. There's a recovery, over.
A recovery helicopter has just put in a call to Apollo 13.
Apollo 13, this is recovery, over.
We have a report from the Iwo Jima that Apollo 13 at a distance of 4 miles from the ship. The smoke you see is venting of RCS propellants, reaction control system propellants.
They're going to 5,000. Roger, Apollo 13, this is recovery, and your chutes look good. Apollo 13, this is recovery. We observed your RCS burn, over.
You heard the conversation between the recovery helicopter and the crew of Apollo 13. The floor of the Mission Operations Control Room now crowded. And there are visible smiles on the faces of the flight controllers and astronauts in this room.
recovery. Apollo 13 is descending through 2,000 feet. Okay, all auxiliary concur. Jimmy, roger out.
A report from the Iwo Jima that Apollo 13 is descending at a point 4 miles due south of the ship.
Apollo 13 and recovery passing through 1,000 feet. Iwo Jima, roger out. Through 500 feet. Swim 1 on station. Is on station. Photo 1's on station. Photo 1 observes splash down at this time. 1 pickup narrative. Roger.
Another cheer in the control room as we had splashdown.
Photo 1 splash down at this time. The 3 chutes are displaced or in the water. Recovery, I have one off this time. Mark 0 degrees magnetic 3.5 miles. Iwo Jima. Iwo Jima, roger. This 401, the command module is stable 1 at this time. They're riding comfortably. And recovery is commencing retrieval of the main chute.
The spacecraft splashed in stable 1. That's with the apex cover up, out of the water.
The vertical axis are approximately 15 degrees. Recovery is maneuvering to grapple the main chute. The 2 other chutes are still visible in the water. Swim 1, you're cleared into position to retrieve the other 2 chutes. Swim 1, roger. This is 401. I observe the flashing light atop the command module. Gang swim to your wind line 270. This 101 presently winds in the area from 270 magnetic, approximately 6 knots.
Recovery 1 will be will perform the pickup of the crew.
See the recovery beacon antenna atop the command module. This is photo 1. The mylar covering on the exterior of the command module has been removed in the area opposite the crew access hatch. Orion. Recovery has grabbed one of the main chutes and deployed a raft to keep it afloat. Rope on is moving out on the second chute. Rope on here. Port side cover. Discovery visual. C stated. The command module is swells 3 to 5 feet from the east. The sea is approximately 1 to 2 feet. Photo, this is Iwo Jima, interrogative astronaut condition, over. Photo 1, roger, break, Apollo 13. Is crew condition okay, over? Very good, sir. We're just scripting the minutes to put out the contract. Roger. Copy, Iwo Jima. Iwo Jima, copy. This is 401. Cloud conditions in the recovery area are approximately 6/10. Cloud cover, combination high cirrus and low stratus. Iwo Jima, this is recovery. I am assuming on scene commander this time, unless otherwise directed, intends to commence the retrieval operations in 1 minute, over. This is Iwo Jima, roger. Web 1. Continue retrieval of that main chute, Web 2. You're cleared into ready position. Recovery is taking backup position, over. Presently unable to see the third main chute. Swim 1 is grappling the second main chute. Okay, the shift of the command module is very slight at this time in the direction of 110. Magnetic. Swim 1 is still attempting to make connection with the second main chute. Swim 1 unable to grab it in tank before we can grapple. This is recovery, roger, understand. Swim 1, take standby position. Swim 1, roger. Relay, is approximately your 10 o'clock to 1 mile, over. Roger, Swim 1, detach. Proceed to the apex cover and attempt retrieval, over. Swim 1, roger. Swim 2, this is recovery. You're cleared to deploy 1 swimmer and the sea anchor, over. Step 2, roger. This is the photo 1. Observe the operating bags, partially inflated at this time.
We copied the report and see it visually, the uprighting bags inflated.
This photo 1 estimates uprighting bags are approximately 1/3 inflated. I can see partial inflation on all 3 uprighting bags. Apollo 13, this is recovery, over. Roger, 13, this is recovery. Would you confirm a successful RCS jump, over? That's affirmative. We had a successful jump. Roger, we'll advise the swimmers. my swimmers advised. This is photo 1. The first swimmer has been deployed. They signaled the thumbs up in the water in good condition. He is making his way to the command module. Inflation of the uprighting bags estimated to be 40%. Swimmer is at the command module. He will commence the anchor attachment shortly. Apollo 13, this is recovery, over. Recovery 13 here. Roger 13, this is recovery. Do you have a lap long and range to go for me, over? No, sir. We froze the display and I was hoping you used to copy it. We didn't read it out over the air. Recovery, roger out. Can you give us our distance to the ship? This is recovery. Your present distance to the ship, 1 mile, bearing 3002 to the ship. Distance to the ship, 1 mile, bearing 3002 to the ship. Your splashdown point 3 miles from Iwo Jima. Thank you. This is photo 1. The sea anchor has been attached. Observe a thumbs up from the swimmer. And swim 2 is his recovery. You're cleared to deploy 2 swimmers at the flotation collar, over. Swim 2, roger.
The sea anchor attached to a pad eye on the side of the Apollo 13 command module.
Getting thumbs up. Everything progressing satisfactorily.
This done to slow down the drift.
Has oriented the command module in the customary manner. Swim 2 is moving in to deploy the flotation collar and 2 additional swimmers. Swim 1 has deployed a smoke in the area and is attempting to retrieve the accessories. Swim 1 has deployed a swimmer in the water. Swim 2 has deployed 2 swimmers. I see a thumbs up. And the flotation collar is deployed. The uprighting bags are inflated approximately 90% this time. The swimmers are working the flotation collar into the command module. Flotation collar is at the command module. The bungee is being extracted and is being deployed around the command module.
The flotation collar will be pulled around the command module with a bungee cord.
One section of the bungee is being attached to the sea anchor attachment ring. It appears to be satisfactorily connected. The second section of the bungee is approximately 90% around the command module.
The flotation collar will be hooked to a bungee line by a line with rings on the flotation collar, and will be pulled around before it's inflated.
Flotation collar has commenced. It is approximately 20% around the command module. Power is approximately 60% deployed around the command module. There is no apparent drift of the command module at this time.
After the collar is secured, 2 7-man life rafts will be dropped with sea anchors attached to the bottom. This is done to keep the rafts from turning over from helicopter backwash.
We are standing by for inflation. This is Iwo Jima. Request you pass to Apollo. Turn off recovery beacon. Over. Roger. Break. Apollo 13. You copy. Alpha 4. Will trail off. Roger. Installation of the flotation collar. Presently normal. Standing by for inflation. I observe flotation taking place at this time. 60% complete. Inflation of the flotation collar appears complete at this time. Apollo 13 appears to be riding a little more comfortably this time. The pitch about the vertical axis is negligible. A swimmer is installing securing straps, fastening them to the tower bolts on the upper deck. raft is in the water, approximately 10 feet from the command module. Two swimmers have the raft in hand and are swimming it to the command module. Raft is at the command module. Swimmers are opening it.
Yeah, the next step in our sequence is to open the hatch.
And the inflation appears to be satisfactory. Swimmers are working to secure the egress raft to the flotation collar. Presently have 3 swimmers in the water, and I observe the signal of swim leader. The recovery commencing approach to deploy the swim leader. Swim leader is in the water, thumbs up. Good condition. Stand by. Swim leader approaching the command module at this time. The inflation of the platform on the egress raft has been completed and satisfactory. The situation static at this time. Presently have 2 swimmers in the egress raft and 2 swimmers standing by in the water. The swim leader is standing on the flotation collar, checking the interior of the command module. Control, go ahead with your quick look. Swim leader is standing on the flotation collar, peering in the forward viewing windows. Recovery is commencing approach to deploy the astronaut's flotation equipment. Recovery is moving into position. The rescue net is halfway down. Recovery is maneuvering to place the rescue net in the egress raft. A swim leader has the rescue net in hand, and it is in the egress raft. The equipment is being removed. Thumbs up Rescue net is on its way back. Swim leader is at the crew access hatch. Appears to be getting ready to open the access hatch. He's checking in the forward viewing windows. Register, would you repeat one more time on item Papa? Is that minus 113 USB? Over.
Sweep the scuba valves right off the side, and it just...
Photo 1, the crew access hatch is open, and the equipment is being passed to the astronauts. The hatch is closed again. Swim leader is observing the activity through the forward viewing window. Roger, sir, copy all. Situation static at this time. Have two swimmers standing by in safety position in the water. Have two swimmers in the egress raft. Roger, sir, we copied and they're picking it up now.
The three Apollo 13 crew members will be hoisted up into the Recovery 1 helicopter by the Billy Pugh net. The device you see that looks much like a half bird cage. For the first time, there are stiffeners in this net. The Billy Pugh net has been used on previous recoveries. These made out of aluminum to provide rigidity to the net. The three Apollo crew members will exit the spacecraft into the egress raft. The Billy Pugh net, by the way, has a center of gravity which is forward of the center line toward the open end to assure that...
Situation is normal at this time. Are standing by while the astronauts make their preparations inside the command module.
This forward center of gravity is designed to assure that an individual being picked up would not tumble out.
Swim leader is opening the crew access hatch. It's completely open. We'll send that itinerary to Dandy by telex if that's okay. First astronaut is climbing out of the command module and is in the egress raft. Alright, to the right control figure, last to a block. Second astronaut is on his way out, being assisted by swim leader. And you want that on all that? Standing on the flotation tower, and is in the egress raft, followed by the third astronaut, moving through the crew access hatch.
their command module. Was taken into the moon, took them instead around the moon with the help of the lunar module Aquarius, and back to Earth with no help from the service propulsion system, which was blown out by that explosion on Monday night.
Discovery is maneuvering for position to commence retrieval of the astronauts. The rescue net is halfway down. Yes, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay. The rescue net is in hand. Resting on the platform. The first astronaut is climbing aboard. Signal has been given. Ready for lift. First astronaut is on his way up. Excellent pickup. No oscillations. First astronaut is halfway up. The first astronaut is at the cargo hatch and is safely aboard the helicopter. Recovery. I have astronaut Hayes aboard. His condition is excellent. Iwo Jima copy. Recovery is in position for the second retrieval. The rescue net is being positioned in the egress raft. The rescue net is in the raft. Is positioned on the platform. The second astronaut is climbing aboard. The signal is given for arrival. Second astronaut is on his way up. Second astronaut is halfway up. Excellent pickup, no oscillations. The rescue net is at the cargo hatch, and the second astronaut is safely aboard. There's recovery. I have astronaut Weigert on board. He reports he field 5. Iwo Jima copy. is on his way up. Third astronaut is halfway up. Third astronaut is nearing the cargo hatch. And he is safely aboard 6-6. Recovery. I have Captain Lovell aboard. He reports he feels fine. Over. English human traffic. Recovery is moving left. Photo, you're cleared in for your documentary photography. Photo.
You know Dasher and Dancer and Prancer and Vixen, Comet and Cupid and Donner and Blitzen.
But do you recall the most famous reindeer of all? Rudolph the red-nosed reindeer had a very shiny nose, and if you ever saw it, you would even say it glows. All of the other reindeer used to laugh and call him names. They never let poor Rudolph join in any reindeer games. Then one foggy Christmas Eve, Santa came to say,
Rudolph, with your nose so bright,
won't you guide my sleigh tonight? Then how the reindeer loved him as they shouted out with glee, Rudolph the red-nosed reindeer, you'll go down in history.
'Twas the day before Christmas, and all through the hills the reindeer were playing, enjoying the spills of skating and coasting and climbing the willows and hopscotch and leapfrog, protected by pillows.
Look, fellas, it's Rudolph. His nose is a sight. It's red as a beet.
Twice as big and twice as bright. Looky, looky, I'm Rudolph.
Poor Rudolph. Where most reindeers' noses are brownish and tiny, Rudolph's was red, very large and quite shiny.
Rudolph! Go on home, Red Nose. Your mama's calling you.
Come, come, Rudolph. Tonight you hang up your stocking.
His nose is a sight. It's red as a beet.
Twice as big and twice as bright.
While way, way up north on this dark, foggy night, awaiting the time for his Christmas Eve flight, good old Santa.
This fog will be hard to get through. Quick, get hitched in a hurry. Dasher, Dancer, Prancer, Vixen, Comet, Cupid, Donner, Blitzen. Hi-ho! To keep our direction, we'll have to fly low. Come down here, quick! Hi-ho! Pretty close. Hi-ho!
foggy, the night dark and drear when Santa arrived at the home of the deer. But all this took time and filled Santa with gloom, while slowly he groped toward the next reindeer's room. The lamp wasn't burning. The glow came instead from Rudolph's red nose at the head of the bed. And then came the greatest idea in all history. So Rudolph is told of the dark and delay, the fog and the blackness and losing the way.
I need you tonight to lead all my deer on the rest of our flight.
Dear Mommy and Daddy, I have gone to help Santa. Don't worry. Rudolph, that's me.
Hurry, Rudolph. It's very dark here.
With Rudolph's red nose as a wonderful light, old Santa flew quickly the rest of the night. So fast that before it was day, the very last present was given away.
Hear ye, a message from Rudolph.
Yes, they'd found Rudolph's message. It's all over town.
Hear ye, Rudolph at the stadium. Come on, come on.
The bad deer who used to do nothing but tease him, well, now they'd do anything only to please him.
Rudolph, my boy, they'll envy you now, far and near. For no greater honor can come to a deer than riding with Santa and guiding my sleigh. The #1 job on the #1 day. I hope you'll continue to keep us from grief. I hereby appoint you Commander-in-Chief.
And Rudolph just blushed from his head to his toes until his whole fur was as red as his nose.
Merry Christmas to all, and to all a good night.
Then all the reindeer loved him as they shouted out with glee, Rudolph the red-nosed reindeer, you'll go down in history.
Contact light. Okay, engine stop. ACA at a descent. Mode control both auto. Descent engine command override off. Engine arm off. 13 is in.
We copy you down, Eagle.
Houston, Tranquility Base here. The Eagle has landed.
Roger, Tranquility. We copy you on the ground. You got a bunch of guys about to turn blue. We're breathing again. Thanks a lot.
And we're getting a picture on the TV. There's a great deal of contrast in it, and currently it's upside down on our monitor, but we can make out a fair amount of detail. Okay, Neil, we can see you coming down the ladder now.
Sunday, July 20th, 1969. Around the world, nearly 1 billion people watched this moment on television as the first man from Earth prepared to set foot upon the moon.
At the foot of the ladder, the LEM footbeds are only depressed in the surface about 1 or 2 inches, although the surface appears to be very, very fine-grained as you get close to it. It's almost like a powder. Ground mass is very fine. I'm going to step off the LEM now. That's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind.
I believe that this nation should commit itself to achieving the goal before this decade is out of landing a man on the moon and returning him safely to the earth.
All that we have accomplished in space, all that we may accomplish in days and years to come, we stand ready to share for the benefit of all mankind.
As we explore the reaches of space, let us go to the new worlds together, not as new worlds to be conquered, but as a new adventure to be shared.
Since the earliest time, man has imagined this moment, the moment when his fellow man would make the first journey to the moon. Now the time had come. In the 6th decade of the 20th century, the ancient dream was to become a reality. The flight of Apollo 11 was the culmination of many years of planning, working, building, and testing. Thousands of people had contributed toward this day of accomplishment. The great Saturn V rocket and the complex Apollo spacecraft had been assembled together and moved to the launch pad. The equipment and techniques and personnel had been proved in earlier missions, and now they were ready. The astronauts chosen for this mission had flown it many times in ground-based simulators. They had all been in space before. They had trained carefully and well, and now they too were ready. Astronaut Michael Collins would pilot the Apollo Command Module. Astronaut Edwin Aldrin Jr. would pilot the Lunar Module. And astronaut Neil Armstrong would serve as mission commander. Armstrong would be the first man to step upon the moon. July 16th, the day had come. The moon awaited. The men rose early, ate breakfast, and dressed in their spacesuits. Other astronauts had made this journey to the launch pad, but never with such anticipation. 9:32 a.m., July 16th. 3 hours later, the Apollo command module moves forward to extract the lunar module from the third stage of the launch vehicle. Both are moving at more than 17,000 miles an hour. Docked together, they will sail 250,000 miles across the sea of space and into orbit around the Earth's nearest neighbor.
Loud and clear now, Mike, and we understand that you are docked.
During the 3-day journey to the moon, the astronauts kept busy. Checklists, navigation and observation, housekeeping. They must work in a weightless environment, keeping their spacecraft and themselves in good condition. Data must be collected and reported. Experiments must be performed, including photography both inside and outside the spacecraft. Because of the film speed, these actions appear faster than they actually were. July 19th. Apollo 11 slows down and goes into orbit around the moon. The bright blue planet of Earth now lies 238,000 miles beyond the lunar horizon. Astronauts Armstrong and Aldrin, now in the lunar module, separate from the command module. Astronaut Collins remains behind. Preparation for the lunar module descent to the moon now begins. The command module assumes the new name, Columbia. The lunar module will be called the Eagle. From Columbia, Michael Collins' camera sees bright rays of the sun reflecting patterns of color from the surface of the Eagle. In this strange metallic bird rides the ancient and endless dream of all mankind. The command pilot can see detail which his camera cannot record. The 4 landing pads of the lunar module are fully extended and locked in place. The Eagle is poised and prepared for its descent to the lunar surface. The moon landing craft rocket engine fires to slow it down and to place it on the pathway to the landing site in the Sea of Tranquility. There is tension and caution as the Eagle flies lower. Warning lights blink on as the computer tries to keep up with the demand for control data, but the status remains go.
Eagle, we got you now. It's looking good, over.
Roger, copy.
Eagle Houston, after yaw around angles, S-band pitch, -9er, yaw, +18. Roger, you're a go to continue power descent. You're a go to continue power descent.
Altitude now 21,000 feet, still looking very good. Velocity down now to 1,200 feet per second.
You're looking great to us, Eagle.
Give us a reading on the 1202 program alarm.
Roger, we got you. We're going at alarm.
Good radar data. We're now in the approach phase, everything looking good. Altitude 4,200.
Houston, you're a go for landing, over.
Roger, understand. Go for landing. 3,000 feet. Program alarm.
Altitude 1,600. 1,400 feet, still looking very good.
700 feet, 21 down. 33 degrees. 100 feet, down at 19. 1201. 1201.
Roger, 1201 alarm. We're go. Same type. We're go.
Altitude, velocity light. 8.5 down. 220 feet. 13 forward. 11 forward, coming down nicely. 200 feet. 4.5 down. 5.5 down.
60 seconds.
Lights on. 6. Down 2.5. Forward. Forward. That's 40 feet, down 2.5. Picking up some dust. 4 forward. 4 forward. Drifting to the right a little. That's okay. Contact light. Okay, engine stop.
We copy you down, Eagle.
Tranquility Base here. The Eagle has landed.
Through the window of the Eagle, Armstrong and Aldrin see what no human eyes have ever seen before. Their spacecraft casts a long shadow across the undisturbed dust of centuries. Seven hours after landing, after careful preparations for later ascent were completed, Armstrong opens the Eagle hatch and begins his climb down to the surface. The first footsteps on this strange new world must be taken cautiously. The moon has only 1/6 the gravity of Earth. The nature of its surface was still unknown.
I'm going to step off the limb now. That's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind.
Once on the surface, Armstrong scoops up a small sample of lunar dust and rock, precaution against the possibility of an emergency takeoff. According to plan, astronaut Aldrin now descends from the Eagle. He and his equipment would weigh 383 pounds on Earth. Here, they weigh about 66 pounds. For a brief moment, the first men on the moon stand and look at the stark, lonely landscape around them, an experience which no one before them can share. But there is much to be done in the limited time which they can stay on this airless, cloudless satellite of Earth. This sheet of metal foil traps and holds particles from the sun, the so-called solar wind, or barrage of solar energy, which constantly strikes the moon's surface. Results of this experiment will be taken back to Earth to reveal new secrets to anxious scientists. An American flag is left behind on the moon, together with medals honoring American and Soviet spacemen who lost their lives in earlier space tests, and a small disc carrying messages of goodwill from 73 nations on Earth. A plaque on the lunar module reads, Here, men from the planet Earth first set foot upon the moon, July 1969 AD. We came in peace for all mankind. Through a specially made television camera, viewers in many nations on Earth were able to watch the astronauts as they walked and worked on the moon. Despite the bulky spacesuits and the backpacks containing oxygen, temperature control, and communications equipment, the Apollo 11 crew found they could move easily about the surface. Because there is no wind or rain on the moon, these footprints will remain for centuries. In addition to collecting rock and soil samples, the explorers leave behind a seismometer. This highly sensitive device would send back valuable information on external meteoroid impacts, as well as internal lunar movements. A 100-prism laser reflector would help man to measure the exact distance from Earth to Moon to an accuracy of 6 inches. These were the first of many experiments which will be taken to the Moon to provide man continuing and increasing knowledge about the Moon and the vastness of space beyond. After 2 hours and 31 minutes, the first lunar explorers had completed their research on the Moon. A night of rest in the lunar module, countdown preparations, and they were ready to come home.
Tranquility Base, Houston. Guidance recommendation is pings, and you're cleared for takeoff.
Roger, understand. We're number 1 on the runway. 7, 6, 5, work stage, engine arm ascent. Beautiful. Very smooth. Very quiet ride. There's that one crater down there.
Thousand feet high, 80 feet per second vertical rise.
Eagle Houston, you're looking good at 2. Ping, zags, and misspin all agree.
And then right down US 1.
Eagle Houston, going right down the track. Everything's great.
Horizontal velocity approaching 2,500 feet per second.
Roger.
Some 120 miles to go until insertion.
July 21st. The Eagle and its 2-man crew lifted off the Moon perfectly and climbed slowly to rendezvous and dock with the mothership, Columbia. While Armstrong and Aldrin explored the Moon, astronaut Collins had kept a long and lonely vigil in the Columbia. The approaching Eagle was a welcome sight. Later, the 3 men would share their reflections on this adventure with the world.
I believe that from the early space flights, we demonstrated a potential to carry out this type of a mission. And again, it was a question of time until this would be accomplished.
I think it's a technical triumph for this country to have said what it was going to do a number of years ago, and then, by golly, do it.
The relative ease with which we were able to carry out our mission, which of course came after a very efficient and a logical sequence of flights, I think that this demonstrated that we were certainly on the right track when we took this commitment to go to the moon.
I just see it as a beginning of a new age.
Once again, the bright blue planet of Earth rises over the lunar horizon. For those who had witnessed man's landing in the Sea of Tranquility, the moon would never again appear quite the same. July 24th, dawn in the Pacific. Apollo blazes across the heavens, coming back to Earth at 25,000 miles an hour. President Richard Nixon, who had talked with the astronauts by telephone while they were on the moon, was waiting aboard the recovery carrier to welcome the returning voyagers. The president later expressed the nation's response to this historic mission.
Some way, when those two Americans stepped on the moon, the people of this world were brought closer together. That it is that spirit, the spirit of Apollo, that America can now help to bring to our relations with other nations. The spirit of Apollo transcends geographical barriers and political differences. It can bring the people of the world together in peace.
To protect against any possible lunar contamination, the astronauts put on airtight special garments before coming aboard the rescue ship. They transferred directly from the helicopter to a mobile quarantine van, in which they would be flown back to the Manned Spacecraft Center in Houston, Texas. July 27th. The journey was ended. They were home again. Ahead lay 3 weeks of isolation, medical tests, and mission debriefings. Then visits to major cities of America and abroad. The details of their unique mission would be relived and remembered so that others might learn what they had learned, and that future travelers in space might build upon their experience. The rock and soil samples brought back would be examined and analyzed by scientists in many lands. They would reveal new insights into the origin and the age and the composition of the moon, and perhaps new knowledge of the Earth as well. Already experiments left on the moon were sending back revealing new information. The mission was successfully completed. The Eagle had landed the first men on the moon, and Columbia had returned them safely to Earth. Wherever man journeys tomorrow across the ocean of our universe, history will remind him that Apollo 11 was mankind's first encounter with a new world.
up in the sky. Look! It's a bird! It's a plane! It's Superman!
Faster than a speeding bullet, more powerful than a locomotive, able to leap tall buildings at a single bound, this amazing stranger from the planet Krypton, the Man of Steel, Superman. Possessing remarkable physical strength, Superman fights a never-ending battle for truth and justice, disguised as a mild-mannered newspaper reporter, Clark Kent.
And I still say Manhattan rightfully belongs to my people.
Possibly, but just what do you expect us to do about it?
You have a newspaper. Publish the truth. Have the island vacated immediately.
It's fantastic.
Why, that's ridiculous. Ridiculous? Maybe modern science will make you think differently.
I've never heard anything so absurd. You know, from the look in his eyes, I'd almost believed he was in earnest.
No, he's just a harmless crank. Come ahead, Miss Lane. You wouldn't want to miss this story, I'm sure. Just a precautionary measure. Now, Miss Lane, get ready for the greatest story of your career.
Come on, Kent. Let's get out of here.
This looks like a job for Superman.
A girl is still down there.
You know, Lois, the old island looks just as good as ever.
That's right, Clark. Thanks to Superman.
Up in the sky, look! It's a bird! It's a plane! It's Superman!
Faster than a speeding bullet. More powerful than a locomotive. Able to leap tall buildings at a single bound. This amazing stranger from the planet Krypton. The Man of Steel. Superman. Empowered with X-ray vision, possessing remarkable physical strength, Superman fights a never-ending battle for truth and justice. Disguised as a mild-mannered newspaper reporter, Clark Kent.
what are you doing here?
Oh, just getting the woman's angle on this story.
The mechanical monster! Look out!
Come on, you fool! You want to get trampled?
Now, you wait here. I'll phone this in. Yes, I'll give you the details later, Chief. All right, Lois. Lois!
This is a job
for Superman.
What a story this is going to make.
The jewels. What have you done with the jewels?
You'll read about it in tomorrow's paper.
Are you going to tell me what happened to those jewels? Won't tell me. You'll soon change your mind. Superman.
more step and she's doomed.
That's a wonderful story, Lois.
Thanks, Clark, but I owe it all to Superman.
All of us will reach a crossroads in life. A decision that has to be made. Some can be small and insignificant. Others seem like they could shape the course of our entire lives. How can we know the will of God? How can we correctly choose the path He has set out for us? And what if we make the wrong decision? We spend sleepless nights and days filled with anxiety when we place these burdens upon ourselves. Often we become isolated, feeling completely alone in finding the right answer. Sometimes we're tempted to rush into a decision. Other times we'd rather delay indefinitely. But for those who call Him Father, for those who believe in the power of His name, He provides everything we need to follow His will. He gives us His Word as a compass and inspiration. Those who live according to Scripture will always follow in His footsteps. He blesses us with wise counsel through His church and the leaders He has set in place. He hears our every prayer, granting peace and wisdom to those who ask. His very Spirit dwells in us, a still small voice that guides from within our hearts. And in His perfect timing, He will open doors. He will clear the way forward. And no matter the path you choose, you are never alone. He will walk beside you and enfold you with His love, from now until the end of eternity. So trust in the Lord with all your heart. Lean not on your own understanding. In all your ways acknowledge Him, and He will make your paths straight.
You've probably heard the word engineering before, and you've probably been told it's pretty important. But what exactly is engineering, and who exactly is an engineer? Engineers are people who design and build things that we use every day. However, they don't just go building the first thing that comes to mind. They work hard to make something we need, and they want to do a good job of it. So how do engineers decide what they need to build? Well, in most cases, they start with a question. Here's an example. Say you live on a space station and something outside breaks. Obviously, you need to go outside and fix it, but how exactly do you do that? That's a great question for engineers. Once they've got a good handle on things, they'll start imagining ways to solve the problem. They'll come up with all kinds of ideas, and some that might even seem a little crazy. That's important because sometimes the craziest idea is the one that works best. After coming up with these ideas, they'll pick a few that make the most sense. Next, they'll start drawing a plan. Depending on the idea, the plan can be very simple or very complicated. But the important part is the plan itself. A good plan helps engineers focus on what they're making and, most importantly, why. Now the engineers get to have some real fun. They get to create something. It's important to stick to the plan, though, so the idea doesn't go too far off course. Once they've built it, then they have to test it. Experimentation is very important because it's here that engineers learn what works and, well, what doesn't. And while it's great when something goes right on the first try, it's actually good when things don't, because that gives engineers a chance to go back and improve on their original idea. And improve they will until they've solved the problem. So the next time you've got a problem to solve, whether simple or complicated, there's probably a team of engineers ready to create something to solve it. And nobody solves engineering problems quite like NASA.
This is the way they settled things in the Old West, with sudden impact. But this isn't 1866. It's 1966. And I'll tell you something. You separate fact from fancy, and you'll find far more impact in the modern world than back in the days of wooden sidewalks and watering troughs. Back then, Jenny Lind appearing at the Opera House was a once-in-a-lifetime affair. Hamlin's Wizard Oil, a miracle drug, cures all pains in man or beast. The general store was the focal point of community activity. But this is another century. Entertainment, television, radio, motion pictures, stage shows, they all compete for our attention. Miracle drugs? Why, the list is endless. And they do work miracles. The Cracker Barrel has given way to the supermarket, the stagecoach to the jetliner. We're surrounded by a sea of wonderful products to buy, each made more appealing by modern merchandising and salesmanship. And that's the point. In a world crammed with impact, your voice has to be heard over all others. And so, welcome to Impact 66. Our theme, put more impact into our selling. And we're here to explore ways to suck home an idea, an advantage, a feature. Not just knowing an advantage, not just saying it, but putting genuine enthusiasm and fire into it, smacking it home so it stays remembered, making something come alive and be important. That's why today, in this once-a-year merchandising rally, we use the big screen. We move around. We dig under sheet metal and generalities to get at the heart of what we have to sell. Impact 66 brings you facts, demonstrations, ammunition for each of your 5 different lines of cars and full line of trucks. Your products are loaded with impact, but you have to pull the trigger. Watch. Just like that. And you know something? Your prospects expect and want you to use showmanship and enthusiasm when you sell. Oh, speaking of showmanship, let's see the kind of impact automobile stunt drivers put into their exhibitions.
This is Chrissy Kanamaki, speaking for Chevrolet and your line of 66 products.
The place? The GM Proving Grounds, Milford, Michigan. The event? The 1966 Thrill of the Year demonstration program. The top cars in the industry, driven by the best drivers in the business, Joey Chitwood and his Hell drivers, plus the drivers from the Proving Grounds. And now, a pulse-quickening demonstration of precision control. Watch how built-in Chevy handling teams up with split-second timing. You can almost hear those bumpers click. It's that close. That is real ride control. How does your 396 cubic inch power plant stack up against the 409? Well, let's pit them in a quarter-mile drag from a standing start. The winner, your 396. The top speed, 92 1/10 miles per hour. That's moving. And so is this. Now, a punishing test of transmission and drive components. The Rock Cycle, a real torture test. Here's a look at the Turbo Titan 3, a multi-fuel turbine engine. A 6-speed automatic transmission, astronaut seats, twin dial steering in place of a steering wheel. The truck of the future, operational today. What happens when a front tire blows at 90 miles an hour? Let's find out. Perfect control, basic built-in stability. How fast can the sizzling SS396 go with 360 horses and a 1/4 mile from a standing start? The top speed, 103 5/10 miles per hour. Next, Corvette, flat out on a high-speed run. Here it comes, and there it goes. Top speed, 151 3/10 miles per hour. That's moving. Next up, a rugged test of suspension, frame, and chassis. Here goes. The toughest chassis design in Chevrolet's history. Yes, sir, your 1966 Chevrolets in action. Showmanship on wheels. And salesmanship, too. All through the year and all over the country, Chevrolets travel the thrill show circuit, creating a strong image of rugged performance. These are the cars you're selling today. 66 models right off the showroom floor.
Now on signal from Joey Chitwood, it's action. Drivers to their cars. In true Indianapolis tradition, gentlemen, start your engines. Precision artistry and high-speed action, the ultimate in control as they utilize the full width, length of the stretch, scissoring high side low and low side high. It's high-speed touch and go, striking elevations, changing sequence over elevations 1, 2, and 3, high and low, low and high. An occasional tap of the brake and frequent bursts from those high-performance engines, utilizing both for control and safety. Now taking a car up on two wheels and holding, maintaining that point of balance. Now the X1 space rocket propulsion shot. Tolerances here involved in 1.5 inches on either side as they enter the breech area of the X1-2. Joey Jr. behind the wheel makes his way around the raceway. That critical moment approaches the breech area. He's in. Slamming down.
The sights, the sounds that spell excitement. Thrill shows that feature 1966 Chevrolets. Thrill shows that keep selling all year long.
That's quite a show, isn't it? And a lot more people are going to see the Joey Chitwood Thrill Show this year than ever before. About 10 million pairs of eyes will see it, because it's going to be shown as an action-packed short subject on big motion picture screens across the country. It's starting its run right now in first-run theaters. Now, this kind of action is one way to present 1966 Chevrolets with impact. Of course, you're not about to give your prospects a demo ride on two wheels or take a few ramp jumps. But isn't it true that you want your prospects to feel the full impact of your product? Now let's take an excursion behind the scenes and see the lengths to which advertising men go to put impact into your television commercials.
Here at Fort Macon, Georgia, a brand new Chevrolet commercial is being filmed. A crew of 26 men and literally tons of equipment have been brought in. The crew will labor for 8 solid days to shoot 2 minutes of film. The script calls for a Chevrolet to be assembled right before your eyes without a human hand touching it. Can do? Yes, sirree. These fellas can do practically anything. Parts of a specially prepared car are suspended on invisible wires, and the car is pulled apart, piece by piece. Later, the motion picture film will be run backwards, so the parts appear to fly onto the car, as you'll see in a moment. The script also calls for parts of the car to come flying off a tree, while still others are to rise from the ocean. Oh, those script writers. For the final scene, an explosives expert has been brought in to plant charges of dynamite throughout another specially prepared car. All set? Cameras rolling? Fire! Now let's look at it as it was recently seen on Bonanza in 23 million American homes.
What you're watching now is the beginning of one of the most exciting things that will happen this year, the beginning of a 1966 Chevrolet.
There it is, a lively, impact-filled commercial that will have plenty of people wondering how it was done. But you know the secret. 26 men working 8 solid days to make it.
Well, that sure seems like going to a lot of trouble just for 2 minutes on TV, doesn't it? But what better way to dramatize all of the exciting elements that are fused together to make a 1966 Chevrolet? As a salesman, I'm sure you go to a lot of trouble, too. Digging into all of the many features you have so that you can blend the right combination of them together into a sale. Hours of work focused right down into minutes of selling. But that's what it takes today. Now, let's get back to some of those product features that you have to sell. How much digging have you done under the hood? Are you in a position to do full justice to a power plant as advanced, as efficient, as revolutionary as the 396? Do you have enough facts to fuse together a portrait of power that will sell? Watch.
And here it is. The sensation-making 396 cubic inch turbojet V8, Chevrolet's big engine for 1966. The biggest thing about it is an ingenious new design of exhaust and intake valve ports that really does something for engine breathing. Breathing is just as important to an engine as it is to a person. The easier it breathes, the more power, pep, and economy you're going to have. In older type engines like this one, breathing is restricted by sharp bends in the manifold passageways and in the design of the valves. But in the 396, Chevrolet's new aircraft-type valve system and special port design produce straighter passageways, making it easier for the fuel mixture to get in, the exhaust gases to get out. Everything about this engine contributes to its greater efficiency. The way the valve stems protrude from the head at precisely calculated angles, which is the reason they call it a porcupine head. The bigger air filter, 40% more area. It's a terrific engine, and it's available in both 396 and 427 cubic inch displacement. And here's something else. Your special high-performance engines carry the same Chevrolet warranty as your other Chevrolet engines, while Fords and Plymouths have only a limited warranty. Your performance engines cost less than Ford engines of comparable power and equipment. Your engines have the axles to go with them to get the most out of them. This is the most advanced engine offered in any production line automobile this year. So now let's see it in the only way that an engine should be seen, in action. So open up your mind to the full opportunity before you and sell power in 66. Sell the new 6, the smoothest operating 6 you ever saw. Sell the 283 V8, the most popular V8 ever built. Sell the 327, more power this year. Sell that sensational new deep breathing 396. Solid in all three blazing power options, 325 to 375 horsepower. Sell the red-hot, power-punching 427, the street version at 390 horsepower, and the high-performance 427 with solid lifters at 425 horsepower. In 1966, your big story is engines. Demonstrate and sell. Sell the full range of Chevrolet power and performance in 1966.
Yes, sir. Whatever people want under the hood, you can give it to them. From all-out economy to all-out performance. You have the finest engine lineup in the industry. Now let's dig a little deeper into some of the many product advantages you have in Chevrolet cars and trucks over competition. But first, a word about the things that you're about to see. They're all based on cold fact. Fact turned up by extensive product testing. We brought a number of cars and trucks of all makes and models to the desert proving grounds in Mesa, Arizona. Our report to you is based strictly on what the engineers uncovered. But instead of confining ourselves to raw facts and figures, we're going to give them to you with a little showmanship to add impact. So, with Superstition Mountain and its fable of the lost Dutchman gold mine looming up out of the desert, let's start off with another fable. One that's been going around recently. A fable about a car. Someone else's car. Here's a little song about it.
It wasn't so long ago in the history of man's voyage toward a better world that ships were carrying eager passengers toward the shores of a new nation that was just in the building. Our forefathers were constructing the foundation of this nation by interlocking inseparably the blocks of our political and economic freedoms. Life our forefathers established on this foundation of freedoms drew people from the far corners of the earth, and all those who set foot on these shores had the opportunity to build a better life for themselves. Even young Jonathan, an unskilled lad from across the sea, hoped to find a job where he could progress according to his ability and enterprise. As the years passed, Jonathan's earnings increased. But he still felt that for a man of his skill, it was about time for another raise.
Mr. Blessgravy, am I not the best crown rounder and brim trimmer in ye business? Then verily, methinks I am worth more moolah.
That you are, Jonathan.
I'm sorry, lad. No raise, Mr. Bless Gravy? I quit.
Sales and profits down. Phooey. I could run ye business better myself. Hey, why not? My own business. All you need's a little capital, a little push, and an idea. Yeah, an idea. Let's see.
So I said to him, I wouldn't wear that hat to a dog fight. Why, there isn't a decent hat in the entire village. And such prices. Imagine paying that much for a poke bonnet. Why, it was an awful thing.
Why not? Women's hats. My own business.
Fortunately, Jonathan was thrifty enough to keep a little nest egg for such an emergency. Well, the cost of the building took care of the nest egg. And there was nothing left to pay for the necessary tools and equipment. But happily, Jonathan had a good reputation. And as his idea promised a profit, his friends and neighbors were willing to invest some of their savings in his new business. In the nick of time, an enterprising chap showed up with the raw materials to make hats. And before long, Jonathan was open for business. First, he had to advertise.
Shop at Bonton, it's the spot. 12 new hat styles, that's a lot. Ladies, get that new hat drill. 30 days to pay your bill.
As an expert salesman, Jonathan demonstrated the superior style and quality of his product. He set a price for his creations that the consumer was willing to pay, and sales dollars poured in from satisfied customers. Jonathan had big dreams of the wonderful rewards of being in business for himself. But before he could buy what he wanted, his employees' wages had to be paid. He had to pay taxes. And his friends who helped finance the business had to be paid a return on their investment. When all of his bills were paid, Jonathan had to exchange his big dream for a little dream.
Mesdames, mademoiselles, it is the privilege of Alphonse, hat stylist to all the grand heads of Europe, to bring you hats with style so chic, a quality magnifique, and a price, ooh la la, so low. Come one, come all to the grand opening.
To meet competition, Jonathan had to plow part of his profits back into the business to develop a better hat. If customers approved the quality, style, and price of Jonathan's new designs, he still could make his dreams come true. With the passing years, this strong foundation of freedoms protected the dignity of the individual and his family, gave everyone the right to worship as he pleased, and promised anyone with ability and enterprise the opportunity to participate in the building of the American way of life as we know it today. A way of life that depends upon millions of thrifty Americans who send a portion of their savings to work in our business system each year. People from all walks of life, workers, farmers, housewives, all of us send our dollars to work in our business system in the hope of earning dividends or interest on our investments. Anyone who has an insurance policy, a bank deposit, or a share of stock is helping to finance our business system. A constant stream of savings dollars must flow into big and small business each year. These dollars help to buy the land, the buildings, the tools and equipment, and create new job opportunities for our expanding population. The goods we produce are distributed to main streets all over the country. While the Main Street of today doesn't look much like the Main Street of Jonathan's time, the principles of our business system remain the same. For businessmen still compete with one another for the consumer's supply of spendable dollars. And Mrs. Consumer is still mighty critical of everything she buys.
Uh-oh, competition.
The management of every business has a continuing problem to improve their product to stay ahead of competition, or else.
Okay, men, this is it. Quick Chill's got the ball. We've got to get it back. Give them that new product play. More style, better quality, new features, and at the right price. Hit the line, men. Let's go.
Micrometer, wrench, file, caliper, slide rule.
In addition to creating a better product, management develops new tools and more efficient methods to help workers turn out more boxes to sell at a price Mrs. Consumer will pay. The new features about this better product are advertised to point out its competitive advantages.
The Auto Magic Permafreeze, with plenty of room for groceries galore. The Auto Magic Permafreeze, with the super duper store-o-matic door. Just press the button for your ice, a feature that is new, and extra space all over the place for other items too. In the Auto Magic Permafreeze, so see your dealer right away. Get a Permafreeze today.
Ah, yes, dear lady. Permafreeze is your kind of refrigerator. High quality at a low price.
Sales dollars from satisfied customers once again flow back to Permafreeze. A successful business must have enough sales dollars coming in to enable management to pay the expenses of doing business, such as salaries and wages, materials and supplies, research and product development, plant maintenance and repair. In addition to all of these bills, management has to pay taxes to local, state, and federal governments. Any money that's left over is known as profit. Wise management plows part of it back into the business. The remainder of the profit is paid out as dividends. These dividends are sent back to investors as a reward for risking their savings in the American business system. Although occasionally some of us pick a lemon and have to take a loss. The constant investment of our savings through good times and bad has enabled our competitive business system to continue to increase the production of more and better goods to meet the demands of our rising population for a better standard of living. For example, it was only a little more than half a century ago that the average worker had only inefficient tools to help him turn out a product. Low production meant low wages. In 1900, many men had to work 10 hours a day, 6 days a week, to earn enough money to provide their families with the bare essentials. Hand labor was the rule in the home as well as the factory. In many families, the youngsters had to work to add their earnings to the family budget and forego the opportunity to get an education. And with most families in those days, the standard of living left much to be desired. A half-century later, we had invested enough in our business system to provide the average worker with efficient and expensive buildings and machinery to enable him to produce enough in a 40-hour week to earn twice as much as the 1900 worker earned in a 60-hour week. This shorter work week gives us all more leisure time to enjoy a standard of living beyond the wildest dreams of anyone who lived a half-century ago. The more we earn, the more our families have to spend for the things they need and want. Young people today have leisure time for fun and enjoy educational opportunities denied their fathers and grandfathers. And fortunately, we have been able to raise our standard of living without sacrificing the spiritual side of life, which means so much to the American family. Our business system has continued to provide a better life for our increasing population, in spite of destructive forces which have pounded against our foundation of freedoms with no avail. However, wars, or the threat of wars, interrupt the normal operations of our competitive business system and may result in government controls which crack essential blocks in our foundation of freedoms. In World War II, wages were controlled. Many workers were frozen to their jobs. Farm prices were controlled, and profits of business were limited. Raw materials were allocated between essential and non-essential business. On Main Street, USA, many of us found less to buy because a good portion of our productive capacity went to the war effort. Prices were fixed, and the available supply of goods was rationed. In war emergencies, we allow government to restrict certain of our freedoms. But we Americans have learned to remove government controls as quickly as possible and to repair the blocks in the foundation of our freedoms to allow our business system to resume its normal operations. While we invest part of our savings to help finance the world's most efficient business system, at the same time we pay taxes to government to finance many kinds of services, which also contribute to our way of life. For example, our taxes must provide the necessary funds to improve and expand our school system. Our taxes must be sufficient to pay for city streets, health, fire, and police protection, and of course, aid to the needy. Our state taxes help pay for highways, educational institutions, and among other things, help to finance important experiments to increase the productivity of our farms. Our federal taxes pay for irrigation and reclamation projects, for national parks, postal services, the Weather Bureau, and many other services. Our taxes have to pay for the enormous cost of past wars and provide the funds for a defense program which will ensure the safety of our country. In addition, all of us should be willing to pay whatever taxes are necessary to enable efficient government to improve or expand any essential service. But with our present tax load, we should avoid pressuring government for any new services that aren't absolutely necessary. Because we all know the more our government provides, the more taxes it's forced to collect. None of us can escape. Big business, small business, farmers, workers. Housewives and all of us have to pay our share. Demanding more and more from government could create a tax burden heavy enough to crack essential blocks in the foundation of our business system. Therefore, we shouldn't let our taxes reach a point where they destroy our ability to save and invest. For as we have seen, our rising standard of living depends upon a constant flow of savings dollars into our business system each year. In the future of our country, waves of destructive forces will continue to batter against our foundation. When any force weakens the interlocked blocks of our political and economic freedoms, as good citizens, we must be quick to use the tools our Constitution gives us and repair any cracks that may appear. As long as we keep the foundation of our business system strong, we shall be able to maintain and improve the way of life our forefathers conceived and established. A way of life which gave everyone who came to this country the chance to progress according to his ability and enterprise. Like the youth of yesterday, the young people of today deserve the same opportunity to earn success and accomplishment. And on this foundation of freedoms, continue to build a better life for themselves and their fellow man in the world of tomorrow.
Once upon a time, in a certain little town, on a street that had beautiful poplar trees growing along each side of it, was a nice little house. Johnny, who had brown eyes, ears that stood out a little like this, a nose that turned up slightly, that always had a happy smile. I said the mouth always had a happy smile. That's better. Now, as well as having a head, of course, arms and legs and a body, just like other little boys. And when they were all put together, Johnny looked like this. Well, now that you know what Johnny looks like, I know you want to hear about a very peculiar thing that happened to him one day. The sun was peeping in his window and was getting ready to wake him up. But look at that sun. He looks a bit disgusted at what he sees in Johnny's room, and no wonder. We didn't want to tell you this, but Johnny's a terribly untidy little boy. Did you ever see such an untidy room? His mother had asked him so many times to hang up his clothes and put away his toys. And like all little boys, he had a good self who told him the right things to do, and he knew he should hang up his pajamas. But like most little boys, Johnny also had a bad self. And I don't know why, but Johnny seemed to prefer to listen to this bad self, who told him, "Don't be a sissy. Throw your pajamas on the floor." And the bad self won. Too bad. Now, of course, the bathroom's nice and clean and tidy. Johnny's mother keeps it that way. But does Johnny help her? Well, not exactly. But his good self tells him he knows he doesn't have to have fun that way. It makes his mother very unhappy. And good self might have won his argument if that bad self had not come up with the old argument. "Ah, don't be a sissy," he told Johnny. "Make all the mess you want. And why? Just splash a little water on yourself and dry it off. Nobody'll know the difference. And what's the good of cleaning your teeth? Unless, of course, you could have some fun with the toothpaste." "But wait," cried good self. "Stop. Just look at the mess you've made. It'll get worse and worse. If you don't mend your ways, you'll turn into a pig for sure, just as your mother said." "Pig," snorted Johnny. "Ah, don't be silly.
But even as he hurried off to breakfast, his hands and feet became little pig's trotters. And though Goodself knew this was bound to happen, he was very sad to see such a nice little boy making such a pig of himself. Of course, Bad Self was just tickled pink, another one over on him. As Johnny rushed into breakfast, he had no idea that his hands and feet were, you know what. But then why should he? With table manners like this. His mother, of course, was most unhappy to see him slurp and spill his food this way. But Johnny paid no attention to what she said. He thought he was a regular fellow. He had the mistaken idea that being neat and well-mannered was like being a sissy. That was why when his good self popped up to remind him that all this bad behavior was going to lead nowhere, Johnny gave him an argument. "Ah," said Johnny. And of course no polite little boy says "ah" in just that way. "I don't want to be polite. I want to be a ball player or a soldier." "Well, you won't be either one," said Good Self. "You'll just be a pig." This pig business was beginning to worry Johnny, and for a moment he began to wonder if he'd better change his ways.
"Don't be silly,"
said Bad Self, popping into the picture again.
"What does it matter how you eat as long as you eat plenty to make you strong?"
Now that sort of reasoning seemed to appeal to Johnny, and he continued to eat as rudely as ever. "Be careful," said Good Self. "You're going too far."
"Ah, hurry up,"
said Bad Self.
"Show him you're a boss around here."
Then Johnny licked his plate and wiped his mouth with his sleeve. "He's getting to be more and more of a pig," murmured Good Self. This, of course, was just what Bad Self wanted. He knew he could get Johnny into even worse trouble if he could just get Good Self out of the way. "Look out!" Too late. As soon as Johnny got outside the house, he ran as fast as he could to the baseball field. And as he approached the field, he saw that the game had already started. This made him very angry because his bad manners and his rudeness had, quite naturally, made him also a very selfish little boy. "Give me the bat," he said to Tommy. "I want to bat first." The other boys could hardly believe that one of their friends could be such a bad sport and such a bully. "Don't be a pig," they called. "See, even your friends think you're a pig," said Good Self. "And no wonder. Snatching the bat away from little Tommy is the most terrible thing you've done yet."
"Ah, why not take the bat?"
shouted Bad Self.
"You're bigger than he is, aren't you?"
"Right," said Johnny the pig. "Let's get on with the game." But the tale doesn't end here. "Play ball!" shouted Johnny. Mickey threw a fast one. Wham! And the ball sailed through the air. As Johnny ran, touched first base, and rushed on, the ball was thrown into Billy, who caught it on second base. "You're out!" shouted Billy. And Johnny was out by a mile. But Johnny didn't like that. He didn't want to be out. "I'm not out! I'm not out!" he screamed at Billy. Poor Billy just blinked. Anybody could see that Johnny was out by a mile. Billy started to explain it, but he just got pushed around for his trouble. Well, that was more than the other boys could stand. They were all good sports, and like all regular fellows, they couldn't stand a bully or someone who wanted his own way all the time. They told Johnny he was a big bully. "You're nothing but a pig," they said. Naturally, they wouldn't have anything more to do with him. "Would you?" "Humph," said Johnny. "They all say I'm a pig. They're crazy." That's what Johnny said. But do you think they were crazy? Bad Self laughed and laughed as he saw what he'd done to Johnny. Good Self decided it was time to do something about it. As for Johnny, he began to feel pretty unhappy. All his friends had left him, and he had that empty feeling that everyone gets when they've been terribly selfish. There was nothing for him to do but go home. On his way, he passed a farmyard where there were some little pigs. He couldn't stand the sight of them. He hurried on his way. He had no idea, of course, the pigs were following him until, "Oink, oink," they said right behind him. "Shoo, shoo," said Johnny to the pigs. Go on home." But the little pigs just stood there and smiled at him. They thought this was fun. They'd never seen a pig with clothes on. Johnny was pretty worried by this time, so he started to run. The pigs ran right behind him, so he ran faster. And the faster Johnny ran, the faster the pigs ran. So Johnny ran still faster. He'd never run so fast before. Puffing and blowing, he arrived at last at his home, swung in the gate, and slammed it shut. Only then did he feel safe from those terrifying little pigs. In the garden, he found his little dog, Rover, lying asleep under a bush, waiting for him. Johnny smiled again. Let his friends call him a pig. Let them walk away from him. Rover was a true friend. Rover wouldn't let him down. Hi, Rover, he called. The dog awakened as soon as he heard that familiar sound. Oh, boy, said Rover to himself. Johnny's here to play with me. And off he ran to greet his little master. Whoa, said Rover. What is that funny-looking thing that sounds like Johnny? Rover decided he didn't know. But whatever it was, he didn't like it. He ran like a flash with howls of dismay, sped like a rocket toward the bushes, and disappeared. Cautiously, he peeped out and blinked. Johnny tried hard to stop a tear from rolling down his cheek. This was the hardest blow of all. Little Rover, whom he'd raised from a pup, with whom he'd romped and played for years, had deserted him. He could stand everything else, but this was too much. He would have to find his mother. Would she run away from him? He'd been very rude and very disobedient. Yes, he'd better see his mother. On the way through the hall, Johnny passed the mirror. Huh? Who was that? Who's that funny-looking creature? He looked at it this way. He looked at it that way. And he looked at it the other way. It's me, Sovereign Catfish. Ma, he yelled. Now he really had to find his mother quickly. Oh, Mother, he said, I've turned into a pig. No one will have anything to do with me, not even Rover. Oh, Mother, I've turned into a pig. Well, of course you have, said his mother. You've turned into a pig because you preferred to act like one.